Hello and welcome back to our How to Paint series. Today we're going to be looking at something a little bit different. We've been doing Dark Angels for I think the past, I don't know, 10 episodes. This time we're going to be doing Ultramarines. Very much highly anticipated by myself, maybe a few of you others. And we're kind of doing this in a little bit of celebration of Space Marine 2. Of course, you play as the titular Ultramarines in that title. And I unfortunately don't have a Titus model, but we're going to do the best we can. I am going to be painting a Sergeant with the classic kind of red helmet, so that should give us, kind of the same feel. But at some point, we will get a proper Titus to lead our Marines into battle. And of course, we're going to be starting out with our Abaddon Black. I'll even showcase it for you there a little bit. We do have a nice layer of primer on already. If you haven't seen my other videos, it's just a decent layer of Vallejo airbrush primer. I don't have an airbrush, but I just manually brush it on. It works just as well. And we're going to be going with our next layer and just very liberally applying this to everywhere we can reach, everywhere we can see. We're going to get some weird angles in here. As always, just kind of the nature of filming these things. I just do want to mention real quick, I do have a Patreon. I normally save it till the end of the video, but going by analytics, most of you guys don't make it to the end, so I'll shout it out here. Link is in the description. It just kind of helps me put out more videos more often. So if this is something you enjoy and you want to see more of, you want more factions and more paints and more tutorials in general, maybe check that out. It greatly helps me out. And other than that, a good way of supporting me is always, like, subscribe, comment, the whole 9 yards. All of it gives me good feedback and kind of tells me where we are and, what we need to work on. And of course, I do like getting feedback from you guys personally. I love comments. I love answering all of your questions, all of your feedback. It brings me great joy. Almost as much joy as painting does. It's very relaxing. And of course, if you have any questions or suggestions, I'm always open to them. With this specific series that I want to start, I want to do a Space Marine of like as many chapters as I can manage. So anything that you guys want to see chapter-wise, whether it's like your personal favorite or whether you're just building a new army and you want to know like a good tutorial on like how to get started, feel free to leave it in the comments, and I'll work on that. I have 10 intercessors right now, including this guy. So that's, at least 10 different chapters we can do. And we already have Dark Angels done. So, we've got kind of a good little spot to kind of grow from. And besides that, I also want to move on with kind of some other combat patrols. I'm really eyeing the Tau combat patrol right now. I think that'd be a lot of fun. I kind of really like their models, actually. And I know the meme is Tau are bad and goofy, but man, they've got really cool models. The battle suits they have are just excellently made, and I'm excited to give that a try. And as we kind of wrap up with our base layer here, you don't need perfect coverage. This is generally just for kind of shading our next two layers. So it's, get as much as if you can, but don't worry if it's not 100% perfect and clean. It's going to happen. We'll do a proper cleanup kind of at the end. But we're going to be moving on to our next layer, which might be a little bit controversial. I like Cantor Blue a lot. I know like McCrag Blue, I think, is like the official, GW recommended. But honestly, I think it looks just a little bit too bright for my liking. So I really prefer this Cantor Blue. I think it's, much kind of darker, and it looks a lot better in my opinion. And as always, we're going to start with a nice thin down layer here. If I can get it to the right consistency I want. My paints are not cooperating with me today, unfortunately. And it looks like this is dried already, nice and properly. So we're going to go ahead and just start applying this Again, very liberally. We'll try not to touch the helmet too much. And we'll do kind of everything else. We also don't want to do the gun. I think we'll do the gun red. That's kind of the classic look, right? I think kind of the newer artwork has Ultramarines with black guns, but I don't really like that. I like the classic kind of stuff where they have the red. So we're going to do more of that style. And these pauldrons we want to get nice and covered. And, oops, did not want to get the helmet. It's fine. We'll just go over it with red anyway. I do want to get this backpack, though. Very important. And we will work to kind of get all the little crevices in and around it. It's always the tricky spot, is the backpack. And, of course, we will get this other arm as well. Just a couple of other quick updates. In terms of like what I've got going on in the background, you know, not related to the channel. There's a ton of new games coming out that I'm really looking at. The Dead Rising remake just came out, and I gotta say, I am really hyped for that. So, you know, here's hoping I can pick that up soon at a nice sale. I'm really excited for, you know, when Black Friday comes around. I think there'll be some really good games on sale then. But until then, we're just gonna keep on trucking with our paints here. You know, keep me occupied as we kind of wait for the discounts. And as we kind of wrap up our blue here, we're gonna just do a nice thorough little wrap around and get all those little crevices. I'm gonna focus on the bottom of the boots. Usually that ends up not looking quite as good as everything else does. It's often forgotten, but we'll try our best to get it. And you want to be careful about going over areas that you've just painted. If they're still wet and you go back over, it does kind of give you a little bit more buildup than you should have. So that's kind of something to think about. And I'm sure I've done it a couple times by accident, but just try to, you know, stray away from doing that. And I'm thinking, ooh, I don't know if you can see that, but that leg was looking a little bit rough on the back here. Thankfully, that's one of the more hidden areas. You know, as long as we're not really looking for it, we shouldn't be able to really see it, so it's fine. Everything's fine. And I can see that in there, between the gun and the arm, is also looking a little rough, so we will do our best to rectify all of that. This might be a two-part video, but I'm kind of aiming for one part, so if I'm, you know, kind of rushing through this a little bit, that's kind of why. But this is a pretty basic scheme. It's essentially blue, red, and gold are going to be your main colors, with a slight hint of black. And of course we'll do the base. We're probably just going to do a nice mud color. That's usually what my Ultramarines are. Let's see if we can close that paint without peeking the mic. Perfect. And that leads us into our next layer, which is going to be Mephiston red. Actually, I haven't tried this red in quite a while, so I kind of forgot how light or dark it is. So we're going to find out very quickly. This might look terrible, it might look great. If it's bad, I do have another red on standby, so we can always switch once it dries, but we'll give it a whirl. And we're actually going to be switching brushes here a little bit. This is the Citadel starter brush. It comes with, I think, most of the starting paint kits. It's a pretty decent brush. I've got no complaints with it. I don't think it's, you know, the best, but for what it is, and, you know, I essentially got it free with a kit. I can't complain too much. But we are going to use this to kind of more carefully get a little bit more paint on here. And we're going to be focusing just on the helmet. I don't want to get it anywhere else. I'm going to be nice and careful about that. And the smaller the brush you have, the longer it takes to kind of paint. Ooh, unfortunately I got it on the neckline there, but that's fine. But it does allow you to be much more precise, much more careful. So just something to think about. I always kind of like to use the biggest brush I can, just for the purpose of speed. But sometimes you really got to get in there and be patient with these things. And it's not quite perfect, but we'll let it dry and then we'll go back over it. I also want to do this gun in red, so we're going to do that as well while we're here. And I'm still kind of on the fence about how much of it I want red. We'll mix some like black and silver in, but I think the main body of it, at least, we want nice and bright here, just to give us kind of a good contrast. And we'll get some more paint on our palette. I'm not too big a nerd about like color theory. I'm not like a proper artist of any sort, but I've kind of found that if you're painting, Space Marines specifically, just because their armor kind of plays to that strength, is that you either really want one or two big contrasts with your paint, or you just want it all to really blend together. So either do a mix. This is probably going to sound redundant, but I like to just do either a mix of either paints that all blend together, or I'll do like some wild contrast. I try not to do anything in between. I don't like to have a bunch of little paints that all kind of conflict with each other. Just kind of pick two big ones and make that kind of your target, and then everything else is just kind of background noise, right? So with this, obviously our focal points are going to be our helmet and our gun. Everything else is just kind of background, and we'll get a little bit of gold in here, but for the most part, we've kind of figured out what people are going to be drawn to. So that's kind of what we want to make look the cleanest, and where we want to really focus all of our effort. And we'll also do kind of this little bottom piece in red as well. And we'll go right back over the front, keep things in camera if I can manage it. I'm sure someone's going to comment eventually that I don't drill the gun holes. I don't have a little drill for it, and honestly I'm pretty sure I just mess it up. So that's not something I'm going to worry about for the foreseeable future. But if it bugs you sufficiently, I will try to work on that at some point. And there we are. Nice and handled. And before we do any of the panel lining or the edge highlighting with our gold, I do want to go back over these shoulder pads one more time with our blue, just because it's kind of a big deal having to go back over them after the fact. It does get a little bit annoying, just kind of having to skirt around all that gold. So we're going to get just a little bit of blue back on our palette. Not too much. I want this to dry rather quickly, and bam, we're just going to cover those shoulder pads one last time. And if we can, I'll even get this little neckline here that we managed to cover with a little bit of red, unfortunately. And same thing on the shoulder pad. It's very nice and quick with some very thin paint. That way it dries kind of while we're switching over to the next color we're going to use. And just double check, make sure there's nothing I really have missed. These legs always give me trouble. It's always the edge of the legs. I really don't know why I miss that so much, but it's something I'm working on, don't worry. And it looks just about good enough. Maybe it's the lighting, maybe it looks terrible and I just can't see it, but for the most part, I think we're doing pretty well so far. And with that being said, we're going to close up these paint pots real quick so they don't dry on me any more than they tend to. GW paint pots have a little bit of a problem in that regard. I think they're specifically designed that way. That's kind of my conspiracy theory. But they do kind of lend to a lot of excess paint drying, what we'll say. And just shake up my retributive armor here a little bit, just to show it off. You can use Balthazar Gold if you want. I feel like it's a little bit too brass colored when it comes to Ultramarines. It's not the worst. I've really been enjoying it with my Dark Angels, but I feel like it's just not quite right for the vibe that I want. So, and this actually looks kind of weird now that I look at it after having been doing Dark Angels for so long. But actually, we'll switch our brushes. I'm instantly looking at this and thinking it's a bad idea. We will switch our brush to something a little bit smaller because we're going to be doing these pauldrons, we'll be doing the edges of them, and I want to be a little bit neater about it. So just using kind of the backwards kind of curve of our brush there, we just very lightly kind of press against that raised up area. It really naturally kind of coasts along and highlights all of that raised up area for us. You can also use just the edge of your brush for that, but since mine has a curve in it, nothing wrong with that. We are going to kind of utilize that to the best of our ability here. And do the same thing with this other side. We're going to get some wacky angles. That's just kind of how we're going to play this. And unfortunately I got it on the inner pauldron itself. That's fine. You can fix it in just a minute. And my hands are starting to get a little bit shaky, but that's fine. I'll manage it. We will continue along. It's always the high octane, thrill of doing edge highlighting or shoulder trim. It really gets me amped up here. But I will quell my excitement for you guys. Do not worry. And I'm not butchering it horribly, but it's not going too great either. It's fine. Everything's fine. Get a little bit more water on our brush just to keep things thinned down properly, and we'll get some more gold on our palette. Metallic paint usually dries pretty quickly too, so that's something to kind of watch out for. If you're going too slow, your palette will kind of dry up on you very quickly. And I'm kind of going between all of the weird angles right now. It's fine. Just doing these shoulders to the best of my ability here. And actually, I don't even know what kind of angle I want for this bottom here, but we'll try it. We'll do the old upside down. Upside down to the side, any of them, just to kind of get a good result. And nearly finished. I also want to do the little gold skull that's going to be on his forehead. I think that denotes kind of the sergeant marking more than, well, I wouldn't say more than, but kind of equally with the, bright red helmet, which I don't know the exact name of the guy, but it's before the Horus Heresy. One of the Ultramarines kind of suggested, how to efficiently wage war against one of the other chapters or something to that effect. Essentially, preluding to the heresy itself, and it was just so unthinkable at that point that they censored him, and that's why he had to wear a red helmet, and that is why all of the Ultramarines wear red helmets if they are sergeants, is because of that one dude. So there you go, a little bit of lore for you today. Didn't think you were going to get that in a painting video, but there you go. And we're not going to do any fancy tricks with this one. We're just going to use the very tip of our paintbrush and very carefully. And I messed up a little bit, but it's fine. I'm going to do the same thing with the wings and the skull here. There is a proper name for this thing. I just really forget it all the time. So we were going to just ignore it and pretend that it's nothing. There's not a name for it. Of course not. Because if there was, I would totally know it, right? And we'll do the same thing on this side. Just as careful as we can. We're going to do a little bit of cleanup duty on it anyway, so don't stress too much. But get right up. You want to get that very tip of the wing there too. And the skull's the easy part. It's right in the middle. You can just kind of take your brush across it a few times. Nothing too wild. And besides some general cleanup, that's actually looking pretty decent right now. Go right back over a little bit of this edge there. And I think last but not least, we also want to do this kind of skull with the wing on it on the gun here. And that'll kind of be the final touch of gold that we want. And if we cannot butcher it too horribly, that'd be great. It's nice and raised up for us though, so it shouldn't be too bad. And I tell you what, I think we will run this episode just pretty long. It's kind of, I'm at an awkward point where I could finish this guy, and I could do 2 episodes, but it'll just be a weird second kind of tag along kind of length. I think we're easier or better off rather just finishing it off nice and easy in one part. And with doing that, we're going to go slightly back to our red a little bit just for a final touch up or two. We just want to kind of fix the area around this helmet. Nothing too wild. And it's nice and watered down, so once it dries it should look better, but there we are. Perfect. And we'll even go over the front of the face a little bit again. And looking at the gun, it needs a little bit of touch up there on the barrel, but fine. And I think finally we're going to be moving back to our Abaddon Black here. There's a few details we want to get with it. Excuse me. If I could find it, here we are. We do want to do the kind of joints in between all the armor plates. Most of them will be on the back. We also want to do some of the gun that we kind of don't want red, and then I think that kind of should be it in terms of our black. Nothing too crazy. Again, just these little joints back here. You can have your water nice and thin for this, or your paint nice and thin rather, with your water. You don't need it extremely dark, and having more water in it will kind of help it fall into those recesses much easier. And we also want to get kind of these little panels. Same thing on this side. And if you miss, don't worry about it too much. Once it dries, it'll kind of just look like a little bit of dirt. Almost to the same effect of like Null oil. So don't worry about it too much. It's more just for kind of darkening some areas, and it's not like a prominent standout color or anything. I'll do the same thing on the front a little bit there. That little chunk doesn't really matter too much. It's too small to really notice. And actually, before I put that away, I just said we were going to do the gun. I'm extremely forgetful of these things, don't worry. Just early onset dementia coming on, I'm sure. And I just want to touch up the kind of handle a little bit. Clear up some of that red and the magazine as well. And we're actually going to do the shell casings with the Balthazar Gold. Still going to be in our arsenal. We're not totally going to abandon everything we've been doing with our Dark Angels. We are going to bring some of that with us into this video. And we might even touch up this barrel a little bit, just to give our next color a little bit more I don't even know what you want to say. Similar coverage. I don't know. There's a word there that I want to use, but it's not coming to mind. I'm just drawing a blank. It's fine. Everything's fine. And we will also do this kind of hand grip, I guess. I don't know. The anatomy of a bolter is kind of lost to me sometimes. And also get the bottom of that. It's actually looking kind of rough on the bottom there. We missed with our paint a little bit. That's fine. That's why we're going in with this black. Everything that we kind of missed is just going to be shadowed. That's the excuse. And there we are. I also want to get kind of the inside of this bolter a little bit. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's looking a little rough. And there we are. So we're going to do one more cleanup deal, and then we're going to move on to our final kind of base color, or base paint rather. So we're going to start back to our Cantor. This is actually a very full jar. I'm sure you might have been able actually to hear me shaking that. Makes a great little noise. But we are going to get this nice and thinned, as always. And if I can very carefully do this, it's going to take some weird angles, but I do want to fix kind of all of our little mistakes. Mainly these shoulder pads. They were looking pretty rough. And I don't want it built up too much, so I'm just going to kind of spread it out along the entirety of the pad there. Perfect. And a little bit on the chest. This can be really awkward. My paint handle actually isn't helping here. And just kind of as close as we can without getting over onto the eagle itself. I'm going to clean up that paint. And same thing with this neckline, if I can keep it in focus. Perfect. And same thing on this side, nothing too crazy. Just let your brush kind of go into the recess there just to paint that blue. And we're going to touch up that neck a little bit as well. And see, I'm using, my paint is too thin. It's actually drying on the palette before I can even get back to it. It's fine. And I just want to do a little bit of touch up on this back plate. And I think with that, it's looking pretty good, right? I mean, it's not bad. It's not going to be full on parade ready, kind of ready for a golden demon, but it's going to be pretty close. I also want to do the eyes real quick here, just before I forget, because otherwise I know I will. 100%. I'm terrible at that sort of thing. We're going to be using a very, very small brush. It's like a little needle point thing. We're going to be jumping into Caliban Green here. Another holdover from our Dark Angels videos. Of course, I have to go back to it. I'm obsessed with the Dark Angels, man. I don't know what it is. And we're going to be doing the eyes of this color. If it was up to me and I had a slightly lighter color in stock, I would do a little bit of a brighter green, but unfortunately I don't. And I think this might go on just fine. Now, of course, the eyes are always the hardest, but we're going to do our best here just to get all of that little recess area. And I'll even go back on this side a little bit, fix it up. Perfect. There's a little bit of paint that got spilled there, just underneath the left eye. His left, our right, but it's fine. Everything's fine. And now that I have done everything I think I would normally forget, we are going to be moving on to our base. We're going to be using Sterling Mud, my personal favorite for Ultramarines. It's very quick, very easy, very simple. And it's a little messy, but it kind of gives you a decent effect. It kind of covers your guy's boots pretty well, so it, naturally kind of makes it look like your guy's been tromping through mud. And this is actually really goopy for some reason. I'm not used to it being so gelatinous. But we are going to spread this out just all over our base. Don't worry about if it goes in your guy's boots. Kind of keep it away from the getting all over the rim of your base like I just did there. Looks horrible, but it's fine. I'll fix it in post. I'll do like a CGI thing, right? If I had the skills to do it, I would. I'd just make this whole thing look perfect, but I don't, so you're getting like the raw footage. And now that we've done the base, we're going to let that dry, and I think there's like 2 more little details I want to do, and that's going to be some more lead belcher, and then we're also going to do just a little bit of this retributor armor. Retributor armor. Good lord, huh? Cannot talk today. And jumping into it very quickly, just because it's the first thing we have, this retributor armor is going on one little spot, and one little spot only. You can actually ignore this if you don't have this paint. You don't have to go out and buy it just for this reason. But I just like to paint these little bolter shells this color. You can do the standard gold we've been using if you want, but I think it's a little bit more realistic to have these kind of more brass. And Almost perfect. My lighting is actually kind of working against me. I can't really see into this recess here. But that's looking pretty decent. And actually, there we go. I was really scared for a second there. I didn't think I had lead belcher with me, but I in fact do. It was just on the other side of my desk. And this is officially our last paint we're going to do, if I can find a proper brush for it. Lead belcher is a nice silver. I'm sure any of you who have painted Warhammer before are very familiar with it. I think pretty much every color scheme out there uses lead belcher in one way or another. It's very, very kind of accessible in terms of, factions. And we're going to get this on our barrel. It is going to need a little bit of cleanup. Don't worry, I'll fix it in post. But other than that, there's two little spots I like to get. I like to get these little exhaust ports. You don't have to do these silver, but I think they just kind of stand out a little bit more. And they look a little bit better if you do. And then I like to get, if I could get the full thing there. There we are. Get the inside of them as well. I also like to get the kind of underside of these little, I guess these are also exhaust. I don't know. I really do not know. And there we are. That's going to be pretty close to done. Obviously there's a little bit of final touches I need to do there. But overall, and my lighting's kind of wacky, it's kind of hard to see. Overall though, that is our Ultramarine Sergeant battle ready. Not field ready, or not parade ready, rather. But on a tabletop, he'd look pretty decent. So we're going to leave it at that. If you guys enjoyed this video, as always, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Helps me out greatly. Otherwise, I do want to reiterate, I do have a Patreon. And only thing I really have left to say is thank you very much for watching. And hopefully, I will see you guys in the next episode.